Minister Ong Ye Kung, Emeritus Senior Minister Goh Chok Tong, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to warmly welcome all of you to the closing keynote address for the Festival of Ideas 2019, Governance for the Future, Asia's Perspective. Without further ado, I now have the honor of inviting the Dean of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy and Lee Ka-shing Professor of Economics, Professor Danny Quah, to introduce Minister Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Education of the Republic of Singapore.
Yes, I'm Goh Chok Tong, Chairman of the Lee Kuan Yew School Board of Governors. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, it's my great honor that we at the school this evening get to host our Minister of Education, Ong Ye Kung, to deliver a keynote lecture. To those of you who have just arrived for the closing of our Festival of Ideas, a warm welcome. To everyone, welcome to this evening's ministerial dialogue. Mr. Ong's rise to minister and to the front ranks of the fourth generation political leadership has been by common acclaim, nothing short of meteoric, following his election to Parliament in September 2015. Before this, Mr. Ong had served earlier in a range of roles. From 2000 to 2003, he was key in drafting and putting together and bringing to fruition the Singapore-US Free Trade Agreement, a critical part of Singapore's economic policy. He was then Director of Trade and Deputy Chief Negotiator. After that, he served as Principal Private Secretary to then Deputy Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. From 2005 to 2008, he was Chief Executive of the Singapore Workforce Development Agency before he joined the NTUC, where he served in a range of roles, from Assistant Secretary General all the way up through Deputy Secretary General and member of the NTUC Central Committee, and then finally, Director of Group Strategy at Keppel Corporation. I think you all agree this is an amazing portfolio of skills and activities that he brings to the Education Ministry. Singapore's education landscape these past 2 years under Minister's leadership has seen a raft of tremendously exciting changes that balance the delicate trade-off between everyone's joy of learning and the rigors of hardcore disciplinary training. Subtle life skills are at the forefront of this education process as much as our paper qualifications to open doors for jobs. Singapore has in this time shaken up its entire structure of schools and pre-employment and continuing education and training, building out entire whole new flexible pathways in career and professional advancement. Of course, even before this, Singapore's education system has always been regularly cited as gold standard and the envy of all the rest of the world. In the OECD PISA tests, Singapore's 15-year-old school children regularly take first place in every single test subject, science, mathematics, and reading, and it does so by international acclaim without significant gap between rich and poor. When in 2017, the good people at OECD decided to shake things up. For the first time ever, OECD included a PISA assessment for collaborative problem-solving skills, something obviously very different from a lone student sitting at his or her desk doing science, mathematics, or reading. And guess what? Singapore topped that test too, across millions of school children, across scores of nations. Singapore does this by investing heavily in a quality teaching force for consistent pedagogical provision at the very highest levels of prestige, that Singapore's school children get to benefit from the best possible teaching. I like to think that although here at the Lee Kuan Yew School, our students are a bit more, how should I put it, chronologically endowed than the 15-year-olds that are taking the PISA tests, our school too provides an international center of excellence for scholarship that continues to affirm Singapore as a global point of reference for best practice here in public policy education, as much as in science, mathematics, reading, and collaborative problem-solving skills everywhere else across Singapore. You will agree with me, this is an amazing education landscape that Singapore has been able to bring about. Please join me in warmly welcoming to the rostrum our Minister for Education, Minister Ong Ye Kung.
ESM Go, Chairman of LKY SPP Governing Board, Professor Danny Kuan, Dean, faculty, students, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to speak at your festival. Originally, it's meant to be a dialogue, but I think on the occasion of the school's 15th anniversary, I should hijack a bit of time to say something on the rostrum and say a few words. I want to first congratulate the school on reaching this milestone. And you are now an energetic teenager, 15 years old. It's full of ideas and therefore this festival. The illustrious profile of speakers gathered and the strong turnout of policy makers and academics over the past 3 days speak volumes about the reputation of the school. I first heard about the creation of LKY SPP at the 80th birthday celebrations of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Mr. Lee had allowed, actually I can't remember why I was there, I was not donating, but Mr. Lee had allowed the occasion to be used to raise funds for the school. I recall how ESM Go went on stage and then delivered a very straightforward pitch. He said, first, the school was to be named after Mr. Lee Kuan Yew because his name is synonymous with Singapore and with good governance. It would serve as a tribute to his deep insights on issues facing Singapore, the region, and the world. Second, with the school, we hope to establish Singapore as a global point of reference for the study of public policy. This would be highly relevant to developing transitional and newly industrialized economies, and especially those in Asia. The school will serve as a platform for policy makers, practitioners, academics, and students from around the world to exchange ideas, collaborate on research, and contribute to the transformation of the region. And 15 years since its founding, ESM Go is now the school's chairman, still guiding its future, and MOE is very grateful for your leadership. We do not want LKY SPP to be parochial and only be concerned about Singapore. But as it studies the global issues of the day, it must also know Singapore deeply and feature Singapore as a prominent reference point for the world. And this is the original objective of the school, and that objective has not changed. It is a unique position that I think Singapore can occupy. Singapore has to make up for our lack of size and resource endowment with good governance and agility. As a small state connected to the world, we are a microcosm of the world economy and the bellwether of global trends and developments. Not only do we feel the impact of long-term trends earlier than others, we should also respond faster than others. And the school has done well in fulfilling its mission and living up to its name. I want to use this occasion to convey on behalf of MOE our deepest appreciation to its founding dean, Professor Kishore Mahbubani. He can't be with us here today, but I make sure I sent him my speech and he read it. So he has already read what I'm going to read. His leadership and networks were pivotal in establishing the school as a preeminent public policy school globally. The LKY SPP Senior Fellows in Public Service program was developed under his watch. This program regularly brings together leaders from public, private, and people sectors to share their knowledge and expertise. Today, it is one of the premier programs of its kind globally. Under Kishore's tenure, LKY SPP also established itself as a thought leader in public policy, contributing internationally on issues ranging from economic development, social inequality, national identity. An old colleague of mine described Kishore as one of the most famous Singaporeans in the world. And I believe this is partly because of the good work he had done for LKY SPP. So all the best, wherever Kishore you are, all the best to you for whatever you put your mind to next. Kishore's successor, Professor Danny Kuan, has big ideas on how to take the school forward in the next lap of its development. And one important thrust is to further strengthen government-academia partnership. And the school will be working with the government on a scenario planning exercise soon. And I fully support Danny's push in this direction. For a school named after Mr. Lee Kuan Yew must surely have a strong partnership with the government in public policy development. It is also a strategic and far-sighted move, given the situation of the world we are in today. And let me explain why. Globally, governance is becoming more challenging. And I think it may not even be an exaggeration to say that it may well be in crisis mode. What is causing it? First, it may be because incomes across the developed world have stagnated over a decade, profoundly affecting public sentiments. A second reason is that the middle class is shrinking. In the OECD group of advanced economies, the proportion of people in the middle class, that means with income 75 to 200% of national median, has shrunk from 68% for baby boomers to 60% for millennials. Third, social media is pushing governments to become more short-termist. And online falsehoods are undermining the foundation of trust that makes governance effective. Fourth, a new generation is coming of age, and governments may have yet to fully connect with their hopes, their fears, and their dreams. Whatever the reasons may be, it has resulted in the political center ceding ground to the extremes. So let's survey how this has impacted the discourse of key issues of the day. Take technology. It is disrupting industries, creating new jobs, while displacing workers at the same time. The impact is drastically uneven throughout society, creating both booms and busts for individual lives. We have technology companies painting a very rosy outcomes, where their services are everywhere for everyone. And they are Earth's most customer-centric companies. These are all things said by the tech companies. And to those who fear that robots are taking over our jobs, they have been referred to as modern-day Luddites who cannot embrace technology. On the other hand, there are calls to break up technology companies, put a tax on robots, introduce universal basic income to cushion the lives of workers who are affected. And the latter idea was put to a referendum in Switzerland and decisively turned down. Take the issue of inequality. In many societies, privilege and the wealthy are increasingly becoming more entrenched at the top. And the social mobility escalator does not seem to work as well as before. As a result, people are losing faith in meritocracy and in capitalism. This fed the public anger and frustration behind movements such as Occupy Wall Street that framed the issue as a war between the 99% and the 1%. Hence the calls for wealth taxes high enough to tax billionaires out of existence, nationalization of private companies, compulsory distribution of shares to workers. And recently there were promises during elections to offer free college and university education for all. Another issue surrounds the controversy of globalization. And the most emotionally charged aspect of globalization is immigration. When the doors of countries become more open, they attract immigrants, which will unsettle local populations if the numbers are excessive. There is genuine fear about a loss of a nation's identity. And so we have witnessed the growth of protectionist and nativist sentiments around the world, with political leaders vowing to take back our country, build walls, put our country first. And finally, climate change, an existential issue for all countries in the long term. We have prominent people denouncing global warming despite the scientific evidences before them. We also have activists admonishing world leaders to stop talking about money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth, and advocating global measures that can potentially deprive developing countries of a fair chance of economic growth. I believe what I have mentioned are the common narratives that make the headlines and often come through our smartphone notifications. While they often resonate emotionally, they can also sound simplistic logically. The challenges and problems are real and complex, and the solutions cannot be too simple either. Most likely, I think the solutions to these vexing challenges lie not in the extremes, but somewhere along the middle path, and that there are no quick fixes, only long-term, consistent strategies that will take time to show results. For example, to cope with technological disruptions, perhaps what we need is an inclusive growth model that is productivity and innovation driven. It means every enterprise and company doing its part to upgrade and become more efficient. Process by process, we may need to make wise decisions on the task that technology can take over, where human interaction should remain, and where human involvement is non-negotiable, because they represent the core aspects of humanity. To me, teaching is one such process. Perhaps significant efforts are required to educate the young and retrain the adult population. Focus on developing skills and interdisciplinary skills, because that makes workers a lot more resilient in the face of disruption. It means having training programs in the communities and having the right incentives for workers to step forward and undergo training. An aging world coupled with rising inequality will likely mean the need for stronger social safety nets. But beyond that, perhaps what is more important or equally important is systemic intervention on the ground by dedicated social workers to improve the conditions necessary for families to succeed and for children to break out of their poverty cycle. And this may mean improving access to quality education and healthcare, overcoming obstacles to self-improvement, and demonstrating tough love and insisting on better parenting skills when the situation requires it. All these efforts will stress government finances, so long-term fiscal positions need to be re-evaluated to test for sustainability and policies and tax rates adjusted if need be. And can we also embrace free trade, but at the same time upgrade the competitiveness and productivity of industries and workforce, build up export capabilities of companies so that they can benefit from free trade? Can we find and advocate a socially acceptable level of immigration and enable local and foreign manpower to complement one another? In climate change, is it not possible to support the hopes and dreams of the developing world while leveraging technology, green finance, fiscal policies such as carbon taxes to encourage the world to adopt environmentally friendly methods, significant reduction in carbon emissions, change of fuel mix, and prevent a devastating rise in sea levels? I've asked more questions than I've given answers, but I do so in the spirit of academia, where asking the right questions is the start of good research. I believe the solutions to many problems of the day, I think, lie in the middle. But the middle, as I read out the previous paragraphs, you will find the middle is often boring and rarely appeals naturally to populism. It requires tedious explanation, balancing of trade-offs, and backbreaking implementation work. It is hard to boil down to a crisp rallying call like the stirring rhetoric at the extremes. This could partly explain the shrinking of the political middle that we are observing in the West especially. In the US, we know there's greater polarization between the Democrats and the Republicans. In Germany, the centrist governing coalition parties, Social Democrats and Christian Democrats, have lost significant vote shares, including to the far right. In the UK, we're still reading about it. The weakening of the political center led to Brexit, and the political divisiveness continues as Britain heads into elections. France seemed to be the only exception, with President Macron's centrist party commanding a majority in parliament. I have been asking European friends who are in the know. Why is that so? Why is France an exception? One just told me this morning it could be because President Macron was seen as a leader outside of the establishment. Another senior French executive said it was because of demography, as France still has a large percentage of young people and they still have a lot of hope for the future. If we still believe in the politics of the middle, then we need to give thought and voice to its rationality, its analysis of trade-offs, and the longer-term perspectives. LKY SPP can play a significant role in this by dedicating itself to research in public policy. It will probably cover the whole spectrum of policies, but I cannot imagine it not devoting significant resources to the middle. To establish Singapore as a global reference point for the study of public policy, LKY SPP must develop a strong culture of curiosity and rigor in studying public policies. It needs to understand deeply the issues Singapore faces and the pros and cons of various policy options before us. How well LKY SPP can do this will in turn depend on the larger academic environment in Singapore. If young and talented Singaporeans who care about the challenges our country faces do not feel that their research work in academia will be valued, they wouldn't want to join academia. We would have lost a very valuable resource and LKY SPP's vision will be out of reach. MOE and our university leaders recognize this, and we have been working together, taking steps to strengthen the interest in local research. We are pushing to develop a strong local core of Singaporean researchers to do research in all our universities, including in the humanities and social sciences. One key initiative is the START Scholarship, the Singapore Teaching and Academic Research Talent Scheme. It is for young academics to build up a pipeline of local scholars. And recently we enhanced it with a $200,000 inauguration grant to attract young Singaporean researchers from overseas to take on assistant professorships positions in our local universities. And I think we are starting to see some initial results. We have dedicated resources to support local social science and humanities research through the Social Science Research Council, and it is administering a $350 million research budget from 2016 to 2020. We are doing something about a problem Kishore always highlighted, which is a lack of data for researchers to work on. So government agencies are starting to make anonymized administrative data available to local researchers through joint research projects in the social sciences. I believe that by matching data across education, economic, social agencies, and adding a big dose of academic rigor, we have a recipe for great insights and knowledge creation for public policy. Universities are also evaluating their faculty using more varied yardstick beyond publication in top-tier journals. What matters is the impact of the research, of which publication is just a proxy. So even if local good research does not make it to the journals, universities still evaluate faculty fairly and give due recognition to the impact of their research work. Speaking to younger academics today, I sense a strong interest amongst them, and this is amongst both local and foreign researchers and academics, to conduct local research. They told me that the choice between doing local research versus publishing in top-tier journals is a false dilemma. The world is curious to know more about Singapore and our solutions to problems. And good local research will be well sought after by top-tier publications. But we must make an effort to extrapolate the lessons we learn locally so that it is relevant to the region and to the world. And so with their belief and our support, we can make local research vibrant and make Singapore a global reference point in the study of public policy. So I look forward to the immense contributions of LKY SPP in this regard. Thank you very much.